Bilingual Redditors, what have you heard that you weren't supposed to? Story 1. I speak primarily English, but my family comes from a bilingual French part of the province, New Brunswick. So many of my family members communicate in French primarily. During one visit to my grandparents' house, I was looking over the shoulder of my cousin as she wrote a note to one of her friends. This would have been over 10 years ago now, if memory serves, so it wasn't very common for school-aged kids to have phones and text each other. Anyway, she made no effort to hide her note from me because she didn't know I could read French. She was writing about me and my brother, writing that I was annoying. Her exact wording was, "Man, ILS tenant." And she wrote that my brother was cute. So I proved her right in judging me as annoying by abruptly shouting out, "Hey, I'm not that annoying. And you think my brother is cute? That's gross. He's your cousin." Priceless reaction. Story 2. Not me, but I have a story to share. When I was in middle school, there was a group of kids, like 3 or 4 of them, who would sit in the back of the class and speak Creole, chatting and laughing, but nobody could understand what they said. The teacher would tell them to stop speaking in Creole since she couldn't know if they were saying something offensive, which was usually met with them saying something to each other in an obviously mocking manner, and then the whole group breaking out in laughter. So one day, this guy shows up in the class. He says that he's training to be a teacher and he's going to be shadowing the class that day. So he's sitting in a chair in the corner of the room, jotting things down in a notebook. Of course, the Creole-speaking kids were chatting away as usual. So the guy gets up out of a chair and walks over to this group of Creole-speaking kids, so I could hear them pretty clearly. The guy leans over to them and very calmly says, in plain English, "Yes, my is huge and no, your hot teacher ain't gonna suck yours. By the way, I'm your new English teacher. You'll get detention." They never spoke Creole in class again. Story 3. Oh, the fun I've had being able to speak Indonesian. My family and I, like most Australians, go to Bali and Indonesia quite a bit. I learned the language for 12 years and was fluent enough to pass tertiary entrance exams. But Indonesians just aren't used to tourists making much of an effort to speak their language, so as a consequence, they say a lot. My 2 favorite moments would be from my first trip. We were being driven from our hotel to a really popular restaurant. We were being driven by 3 young guys. They were happily chatting away, blissfully unaware that I understood every word. One of them cracked a joke about taking my mother home. They were very much just cracking a joke, not real ill intent. And when they all laughed, I laughed really loudly. They stopped immediately and said in Indonesian, "How long have you been learning Indonesian?" Was a pretty quiet car ride after that. The other time would be at the markets. I was buying some crappy jewelry from a small stall by the side of the road, and I made a point of bordering in English for a change. In the middle of our transaction, she turns to her daughter, who was sitting next to her in the stall and says, "Make sure you never barter much when the young ones are alone. They're easier to make more money." To which I said, "Could you please repeat yourself, but slower?" And her face. It was magical. I had never seen someone so shocked. Her daughter ended up giving me the things for their cost price, and we chatted and hung out quite a bit too. All in all, victory is all around. Story 4. I speak fluent English and German, plus a few other languages where I can speak the basics. I was sitting in a hot tub while on vacation in California. These 2 German girls came to a little while later and got in the hot tub. The hot tub overlooks the pool and the public beach since the hotel was on the water. I made some small chats in English when they got in and they assumed I only spoke English. So they started talking among themselves in German. They started commenting on people that would walk by with all sorts of things. "I bet she has breast implants. He's probably her mistress," etc. I was just listening and holding anything back. Then they started narrating the seagull who kept asking for scraps and were making some horrible remarks. "Hey you fat cow, you're already fat enough. Throw me some food you fatty." They cracked a few good jokes. Considering they were German humor, I still found them really funny. But before I knew it, I lost my sh*** and started cracking up. They knew instantly. Their faces turned bright red from shame. I just laughed even harder. I then said, "Thanks for the laughs. I'll leave you too. Have a good day." In perfect German. Story 5. I've had a few of these actually. I speak both English and Dari and you'd be amazed at the places where you see Afghan people. One time I was at Macy's trying to grab a pair of Levi 508s, but they didn't have my size and the color. So in Levi's area, 2 women had Macy's name tags on that were speaking to each other. As I got closer, I noticed that it was Dari but didn't want to say anything. I came up to them and said, "Excuse me, but can you check if you have this in this size?" And one of the ladies turned to the other and said, "Dari, wait for a second while I show this idiot we don't have what he wants." I didn't say anything and turns out they did have it in my size, but it was in another spot. Once I grabbed them, I turned to her and said, "Dari, thank you very much for the help." She and her friend both turned bright red and asked if I was Afghan and apologized multiple times. In the end, they hooked it up with some secret 40% off code, so it all worked out. Another time I really remember was back when I worked at the Apple store. This guy came in, clearly spoke very little to no English and was trying to explain an issue with his phone. Since there was no one else with him at the time, I had no idea what other language he spoke and tried to work with him to figure out what the issue was through the broken English in charades. There was actually nothing wrong with the phone. He wanted multitasking and FaceTime, iOS 4 on it, but he had a first-gen iPhone and couldn't get it. Anyways, after about 20 minutes of him telling me, why not work? When I told him that his phone is too old, he started to get really frustrated. A bunch of other guys came in and walked up to him. They asked him what was going on and he turned around and said, "In Dari of course, these dumbass working here don't even know how to fix their own product." And ranted on a bit about how none of the workers are above a certain age and how we're all spoiled, etc. etc. So after a little bit of his rant, I stopped him and said in Dari, "Well, I have been trying to tell you for the past 20 minutes that your phone is too old and will not work, but apparently you don't understand English. There's nothing wrong with your phone, but there is something wrong with you coming here, not speaking any English, then getting angry when you don't understand a response." Much redness and apologies ensued. Story 6. Not me, but my girlfriend. She speaks English and Dutch. There have been numerous times that she has been in England and heard people speaking in Dutch about things you wouldn't usually talk about in public. For example, when she was on the bus she heard 2 guys talking behind her describing this lump he'd found in his D*******. Now because they assumed no one could understand them, they were talking at normal levels. I was next to her at the time and she told me and I burst out laughing. When we got off the bus we turned to them and said, "Does," which is bye in Dutch. The look on their faces were brilliant. Story 7. I was on the train in Brisbane on my way home from work. There were some male French tourists on there, plus the usual gaggle of schoolgirls from the local Catholic schools. The guy started talking and pointing to some of the girls, clearly kids in uniform, and saying some disgusting along the lines of, "Old enough to F******, and I bet the ones bear in mind these girls are like years 8 to 9, so like 13 to 14 years old, and definitely underage." I was getting increasingly pissed off at the comments and turned to them and yelled in French, "Shame on you creepy old perverts." I've never seen someone look so shocked in my life. They got off at the next stop but not before practically melding into the walls. Story 8. Ooh, I have a good one. I'm Asian and I live in France, so my French is pretty fluent, spoken at least. I was visiting some friends in London last summer and on the tube there were a group of 5 French tourists standing around and pretty much whining about everyone else in the tube, saying that Brits are so ugly, dissing how they dressed, really petty whining. I was already side-eyeing the crap out of this group but pretty much kept to myself and my friends. Then the tube started getting really crowded and we had to move in nearer to said French group. I accidentally bumped shoulders with one of the guys in the group and he proceeded to groan loudly, then turned to his friends and say, "All these disgusting Asians, they're everywhere. China, what a witch." His group started laughing and looking at me. At that point I saw white and completely lost it. I turned around and addressed his old group, calling them out on their ignorance and racist bullshit, telling them off for being the exact stereotype of French tourists that ruined the reputations of the decent French people out there and assuming that no one else can speak their language while traveling around in Europe. Ended by saying if you don't want to see any other races or ethnicity you should probably stay in that hole you call home and not travel abroad if you're going to act like a massive douche. Everyone was looking at me at this point. My friends were like, "What?" and trying to get me to stop. I just said loudly in English to everyone else that this group of French people was making racist statements and deserved to be called out. They all pretty much turned red and one of the other people in the group mumbled a quick apology. They got off the tube at the next stop. Story 9. When my mom was in her 20s she was in line at a mall and she heard 2 Arabic men behind her making fun of all those slutty American women and talking about her. FYI, she was not dressed badly. She was even super modest by today's standards. But in Saudi the women cover everything but their eyes. She grew up in Saudi, so she not only spoke the language but she was very familiar with the beliefs there. She then turned around and chewed them out in Arabic for disrespecting her and told them they should be ashamed for so boldly acting outside of their belief system, at the expense of strangers in a country that does not have the same restrictions. Story 10. In high school, my dad and I went backpacking through the Sierra Nevada mountain range in California. I was in this small town named Lone Pine, which is about 4 hours north of Lane. There were tons of German and French tourists there who had been visiting the redwood forest. I speak both English and French fluently, and I overheard these two French girls talk about me in a convenience store. One of them nodded in my direction and said, "What about that one?" To which the other one replied, "He seems kind of dumb but he's cute, so yeah, I'd probably sleep with him." I thought I would try my luck and approach them about it. In French I said, "So I'd like to take you up on that offer if you're up to it." They were clearly pretty embarrassed and just walked away giggling. Story 11. Jesus, the French get a bad rap here. Speaking of which, I was in Krakow, Poland with a few friends, all French, including me. Now Krakow is an amazing city, but one of our friends, actually a friend of a friend, was born and raised Parisian. I know it's a stereotype, but they do tend to look down on people, even by French standards. Anywho, there are 5 of us in the tram, standing awkwardly in the middle aisle because all the other seats are taken. We're the only ones standing though, so we attract people's looks to begin with. And for some reason Paris girl starts rambling about how everyone just looks so depressed and tired here. Compared to Paris, which wasn't true at all, and considering our steady diet of just vodka while we were here, we were certainly the most zombie-looking of the bunch. After a while I say, "Paris girl, tune it down, who are you to say that?" What? They can't understand it anyway. Like, F*** they can't. How would you know? And just because they can't understand doesn't mean you get to insult them, geez. By now I could see a few frowns in our direction, probably from how loud we were. Anyway, Paris girl stops for a bit and all of a sudden starts again with a massive, loud and clear, "They're all ugly anyway." At this moment, 2 friends of mine and I, all at the same time, scream variations of "Shut up for the love of God." She did. And I swear that when we got out of the tram, a younger guy sitting looked at me, nodded in approval and mouthed merci to me. Here is the end of the video, so you know, be careful while talking your foreign language around strangers. Make sure to like and subscribe if you want more videos.